Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today. We're really looking forward to a great session here and learning about the workings of the Northern Ontario Angels, but also to introduce Ian and Mary to everyone as well. I just want to start off, if I can, with a land acknowledgement and be getting people entered into our session here as we move along. Thank you very much again, as I said, for joining us. We'll begin this event today by acknowledging that while we are in cyberspace, we here in Sault Ste. Marie are meeting on the lands that have been inhabited by Indigenous peoples since time immemorial. We are grateful for the opportunity to meet here, and we thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. We recognize and deeply appreciate their historic connection to this place. We also recognize the contributions that all Indigenous peoples and the Métis have made, both in shaping and strengthening each community represented here, but as well as our province and country. This recognition is also clearly connected to our collective commitment to make the promise and the challenge of addressing truth and reconciliation and making it real in our communities. So again, thank you very much for joining us today. So we're very pleased to have with us Ian Lane and Mary Long-Irwin from the Northern Ontario Angels. I'll let them explain what the organization is and what they do. And then if you do have any questions, we certainly encourage you to put them in the chat as we're going through our discussions. And also we're a fairly small group, so if you do wish, just raise your hand and you can unmute yourself and ask those questions as well. So Ian, Mary, thank you so much for joining us. And I think what we'll do is we'll kick things off with Mary. Mary has quite a lengthy history with Northern Ontario Angels, and then we'll be able to introduce Ian, whose experience is still, I think, Ian, in year one, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, that's correct.
Super. So Mary, please launch us off into our session.
Good morning, everybody, or now it's noon. Thank you for inviting me. I've been with Northern Ontario Angels for 12 years as the executive director, and then fortunately the board hired Ian Lane to be our executive director about a year ago. And I'll get Ian to sort of explain a little bit more about what Northern Ontario Angels does and his role with them. But my current role is the Director of International Development. So in addition to, we currently have, I would say, about 450 to 500 angel investors. A good 100, 150 of those are from all over the world. And those are the ones that I work with along with Northwestern Ontario. The angel investors internationally, globally, are not that much different than the hundreds that we have here in Northern Ontario. The only thing is they look to companies that already have proof of concept or proof of sales. They look to see if the company already has a current strong investor, because they're not boots on the ground here, so they are depending and relying on the investor. And they invest in all types, but particularly different countries have different preferences, if you will. A large number of them do like our mining sector, both the technology, the equipment, and what's in the ground in our mining sector. But lately, it's been more the expansion of the mines. There's been a lot of money, outside money put into that. We also have countries that, like India, for example, that like to look at our gas stations, restaurants, as well as hotels. They are looking at doing it for a particular reason. They typically want jobs created for their kids, or their kids will be managing a part of the business. And so they'll put in that investment. So they may say, I will give X number of dollars for a hotel, providing the hotel has strong management. And, this person here that is now residing in Sault Ste. Marie or Thunder Bay or Sudbury will own 10% of it and be working at the place. So we have those. And then the other strong one that we have is our med technology. And that is because NOHFC is very generous in putting in non-dilutive funds or putting in money that is in the form of a non-repayable grant. FedNor is very good on that. So they like to do that because if they put in 500,000, all of a sudden their money is worth so much more because they are matching it with FedNor and NOHFC. So those are the things that I am working on now. It's very interesting. And it's really great to see the acknowledgement from other countries that Northern Ontario Angel is such a solid top angel group in North America. I hear that time and time again. So I'm going to move it to Ian. He can sort of explain a little bit in detail about Northern Ontario Angels. I don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah, thanks, Mary. And you trained me well though, so I've got all the main speaking points. Thank you. Thanks everyone for finding time to join us today. This is really cool. I'm looking at the names here. I don't see many cameras on, but Patty in North Bay, Kim has joined us, our great colleague here in Sudbury. I'm also in Sudbury. Mary's in Thunder Bay. Northern Ontario's Angels is a regional network. And it's nice to see some different communities represented here. And Mary talked about what, some of the international stuff and sector specific things. But we are the #1 angel network in Canada and one of the top ones in North America because we represent our region. And so we have chapter communities across all of the North. Like I said, I'm here in Sudbury, so myself, and I'm supported by two gentlemen. We're also in Parry Sound, North Bay, Timmins, Sault Ste. Marie. Randy Talon, you're there. You have to turn your camera on and say hi to everyone. Mary, like I mentioned, is in Thunder Bay. We have a presence in Kenora, and then we're also working with and for Indigenous entrepreneurs and investors in the far north. We have an Indigenous consultant, Mr. Stan Beardy. So that's 9 consultants in 8 communities across the region. And so we've got an impressive network, diverse skill sets, and we welcome different types of deals. So we've supported a restaurant in a rural and remote area that needs to change their line over. They need an investment into new equipment to thrive. And that restaurant is an important employer for that community. They create jobs, they maintain jobs. And I think that's one of our successes is that we look at a lot of different types of deals. Now, like Mary mentioned, there's the technology stuff. We get, I'd say probably 50% of our deals are in the technology realm. So that could be mining technology, it can be fintech, it could be med tech, life sciences tech. There's a whole bunch of different types of subsets of it. But each of our communities have different assets and different strengths, and so we see those different types of assets and strengths come across our desks. And Mary was the architect of this organization and did an amazing job being able to connect those opportunities with the right investors. And that's again something else that separates us. We don't just blitz your inbox with opportunities if you're an investor. We make sure that it's targeted and that the deals that are of interest to you, that match with your thesis if you're an investor, are going to come across your desk. And then the other thing that I should reference too is we are funded by FedNor and the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund Corporation. That historical funding, and this comes from 2005 when FedNor did a task force, affords us the opportunity to do quite a bit of due diligence, and it affords us to have our consultants across the region in these chapter communities. And so we can spend time with entrepreneurs or businesses to get them investor ready, to get them to that point where our investors are going to be very confident in the product that we're putting across their desk. So that's, our investors move really quickly. I think Mary could tell you she's had experiences where she picks up the phone and closes a deal within a phone call. Sometimes they take a little bit more time depending on the complexity, but that's, again, it's a case-by-case scenario that we entertain. But we've got the team and we've got the trust amongst our investors to be able to do it. So really, really proud of the numbers and the network that we have. Like I mentioned, we are the top angel network in Canada, and I believe there's about 45 of them that report into the National Angel Capital Organization. Mary is the chair of that organization. We also report into the Angel Capital Association in the United States, which is about 75 different angel networks there, and we are graded in the top category. And that's based on the number of deals we execute in a calendar year. And it's also based on the size of the checks our angels put in. So we can say that we are the #1 angel network in North America. And we are in your backyard. And I'm delighted to have an invitation from Rory today. Thank you for putting this together, Rory and Don, to present to you so that we can create some exposure and create some awareness around who we are, what we do, how we can facilitate helping you grow your business. So before I hand it over for a little bit of a Q&A, I would say that we've got probably 3 main stakeholders in our enterprise. So we have entrepreneurs. I think many of you that are on the phone or on the call right now that are looking to scale. They're looking for a little bit of investment to take their product to the next level. Then we have our investors. Our network doesn't exist without our investors. They are putting their own money into companies that they believe are going to grow. And yeah, they'll get a return on it. But Mary mentioned there's also a silo drive there too, where they're trying to create jobs for today and future generations. So our network doesn't exist without our investors. We also need good entrepreneurs and good businesses. And that comes through personal networks, but it also comes through our third stakeholder, which is like the Chambers of Commerce. It's the Sault Ste. Marie Innovation Center. It's the NICOs, Community Future Groups in North Bay. There's a whole ecosystem in Northern Ontario. Mary mentioned the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund Corporation with non-dilutive grants. Our investors see that a project or a business has been funded by the NOHFC, it relaxes them. It gives them a whole degree of confidence that they may not have had otherwise because of the due diligence. And well, if you've ever applied to the NOHFC, God bless them, it takes time and they ask a lot of questions, and it's an incredibly rigorous due diligence. But our investors really like to see that. And so we're part of an ecosystem. We come in at different points. We can come very early, we can come in towards the end. But without entrepreneurs, without our partner agencies like Millworks, Brent and Carson, thanks for joining. Our economic development corporations, Rick, thank you. And our investors, our network is a little bit more fragile. So we've got a wonderful ecosystem and we're just one part of it.
Maybe Ian, we can sort of expand on that ecosystem, because financing is a larger ecosystem, and maybe you can describe sort of where the Northern Angels fit in terms of traditional financing. So your bank, the community futures, NOHFC, FedNor, there's lots of different avenues for a business to investigate when they're on the hunt for capital. And where in that market then does the NOA sort of see itself, and where does it fit?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and I'll give my best answer and then maybe ask Mary for clarification. But we bob and weave in different parts of the funding continuum. You mentioned banks, so sometimes banks just might be reticent to put that risk capital into a company. But if that company can leverage angel investment, they can walk into the bank and there's a whole degree of confidence that they can leverage some of that traditional conventional financing. Like I mentioned in my little rant there, NOHFC or FedNor or Ontario Centers of Innovation, some of those tech funders, that might be an early application from our companies. And once they can produce the veracity around raising whatever it is, 250 from NOHFC, 250 from FedNor, they can come to our angels, and our angels have that degree of confidence. And so I think that's really what makes us special, is that we can bounce around a little bit and be nimble. We can be the first in. We might be the last one in. When we talk about metrics, so since inception, if you take all the funding sources across all of our deals, which we've just eclipsed 500 deals since 2005, we've contributed to over $730 million to Northern Ontario. Our businesses have to be in Northern Ontario. Investors can be anywhere. That's why Mary is, creating exposure to international investors. but the opportunities need to be here. So if we look at that 730 million, about a third of that, a little over a third of that comes from our angel investors. Founders need to put their own money into it. Conventional sources put a little bit into it. Government sources put into it, but we're probably the biggest quotient of the pie. So it's a great question. I don't have a standard answer because we do come in at different points along the continuum. And again, I'll stress that I think that's the special part of our network.
And if I can just add to that, I'm going to put it out there. We are probably the most expensive money because the investor typically takes a piece of your company or a percentage of the profits or a higher rate of interest. But it is, in my opinion, very smart money. I'm going to give a couple of examples. One of them would be if you needed, say, 200,000-300,000, and the investor believed in you, saw your passion, believes that you can pull this off and put legs underneath your business, get it up and running, but you may be a little bit weak in the finances, then the investor may put in their financial person into your company 1 day a week, and you're not paying for that. The investor is going to put whatever they can to make your business successful. So if you need a hand with marketing, or they open up their network for you, or you're looking at manufacturing, but you're not sure about the processes, all of those things the investors will help with. And then also to Ian's, so we look at stacking, and how we do that is we work with our partners. So the Innovation Center may have a piece in bringing that company founder ready to become investment ready, but they also have certain pots of money so that you can get some money to get your patent that you may need for your business. Everything to get your business up and ready to go. And then whatever pieces that you're missing in the financial piece, we will look to our investors to fill that in, so that way you're getting whatever less expensive money that you need, but you're still getting investments. And with that investments comes a lot of networks, a lot of experience. I've seen investors train a company founder to become a true entrepreneur, and that entrepreneur has risen and been very successful. So those are some of the pieces. Other things, if you come to us and we work with our partners, again, we will know what money is out there for you to try and make sure that you have access to that. We have mining companies that will come to me and say, I will do 10 investments, but I want to do it with the Indigenous communities with which we have signatory agreements. General public may not be aware of that. So if you're coming to me from the far north and saying, I have this type of business, I will go to the mining companies first to see if you can get those. Those rates are very reasonable. Now, if a bank knows that you have a mining company within your communities, and that mining company may use your goods or services, it's much easier to get a bank loan at a better rate. I've also seen investors go hand in hand with the company founder to a bank and help negotiate a deal and say to the bank, I want a really good rate, a line of credit for this company at a great rate, and I will underwrite it. So there are a lot of different options that the investors work with, albeit it is not free money. That's how they earn their money, but their heart and passion is into seeing and growing and developing entrepreneurs to become extremely successful. That's why I think it's really important to have an investor in your company and part of your income statement or part of your balance sheet where you have some investments.
Yeah. So who are these investors? What do they look like? Where do they come from? Like if somebody is looking to the NOA to attract capital to their business, who could they expect to come on as an investor, or if you like, even to a certain degree, a partner? So, who are these folks?
before I would have said 12 years ago, I would have said an older semi-retired white man, but it's not like that anymore. Our investors are females, younger people, somewhat retired, are Indigenous people. Our investors are the face of the community. So if you come to me, we do have people that will say, I want an investor that is female for whatever reason, or I want an investor who lives here, or I want an investor who does not live here. So, but it's the same thing with the investors. We have some investors that say, I only want to invest in young people. I only want to invest in Indigenous. I only want to invest in people that have a proven track record and want to expand. So it's as many different, it's the face of our community. And as different as that is, that's the investors as well.
Yeah, when you are looking at matchmaking investors in a business, does the business actually have the opportunity to sort of stipulate, I want somebody that's got a financial background, or I want somebody who's got marketing expertise?
Yeah, we absolutely. I haven't seen it a lot. Mary's experience is greater than mine, but I've, just yesterday, working with a company that would be using their use of proceeds, which is the angel investment, to round out their sales and marketing team, and to hire their C-suite. So they want a CFO, right? And that may come from our investor pool. So Rory, to another angle of answering your question, investors are high net worth individuals. You have to meet certain financial criteria by the Ontario Securities Commission to be an accredited investor, but these are typically folks that have gone through the process of being entrepreneurs, that they've been very successful, and they want to impart their expertise and their experiences. And I can think of a gentleman here in Sudbury who's been an amazing mentor, and it's not dictating to the company or the entrepreneur, thou shalt do this. Would you consider doing it? So they have a really consultative approach, but they really want to impart the growing pains that they've gone through to help accelerate your business and get it to market. Obviously, there's a stake in it for them. They've put their own money into it, and your performance, your milestones that you meet, will help them get their return on it. But I find they're very interested in the company. They're probably coming from the sector that you're in. They've got a network that is probably expansive if you're just starting out. And like I said, you can accelerate your innovation, service, product, whatever it is, by welcoming an angel into your network. And this kind of dovetails on the last question that you asked a little bit. Sometimes we talk to entrepreneurs, and the myth of angel investing is, what do I give up in my company? And I would stress that we want to reframe it is, what are you gaining? Right? Mary kind of talked about it, where you're going to get that expertise. You're going to have somebody potentially that's going to work one day a week for you. And yeah, it's not free. It comes through their investment. But the fashion in which they will accelerate your business, I think it's a smart investment from the entrepreneur, and it's typically a smart investment from the investor as well.
So and I'm going to use, if I can, I just want to use an example to exactly what Ian said. We had a company that had a product, a tech product, and they wanted the investment, and I was able to, they got a local investment, and we were also able to get an international investor, but the international investor said, I would like 40% of all your sales, or 40% of the profit from the sales of all the products sold in Asia, which included India. It's huge. And the person said, came to me and said, I don't know if I want to give that up. And I said, oh, you know what? You're right. How much do you have right now? And he said, nothing. I said, then you're not giving up anything. And then they stopped to realize that.
Yeah, it's funny. When I was in the angel game with the Southern Ontario Fund for Investment and Innovation, we always used to say, do you want to own 100% of $100 company or 50% of $100 million company? You tell me, where you want to be with that. But let's talk a little bit here on money's not free. right? But free, I mean, so fees are structured, like you say, they tend to be very highly, I guess, structured, and not just interest rates. Can you talk a little bit about how these sort of structures can be customized, and, you know, we're stacking and layering and security, and, you know, there's a whole number of things that have to be considered.
Yeah, there's a again, it's not a one size fits all. It depends on the business, depends on the investment amount, et cetera, et cetera. But we typically see a lot of convertible debentures. That's the predominant type of a deal that we'll support, or a SAFE, which is basically getting equity down the road should the milestones be met. But convertible debt, you're essentially the investor is funding the operations of the business for X amount of time. Again, it depends on the sector, depends on the company, and, you know, should the company perform the way the investor and the entrepreneur business see when they set out on the deal, the convertible debt has an opportunity to be flipped into equity shares in the company. So it's you know, it's interesting. Like, it sounds pretty complicated, it sounds pretty technical. That's why we have Mary, that's why we have Randy, that's why we have the other consultants, the innovation center. They'll walk entrepreneurs through this process. They'll walk you through what a term sheet will look like, kind of demystify it to take the technicality out of it. But, you know, thematically, something that I would want to share with everyone: take all the numbers, take all that stuff out of it. Investors are investing in people. It's relationships to relationships. We talked about the kind of the coachability. So we'll triage companies, and I don't want to sound like I'm ruthless, because I think we entertain a lot of applications that come through our various channels. But one thing that's really easy for us to say, sorry, this may be a good idea, but what's going to be really hard for us to match you with an investor is if you're rigid, you know, very difficult, not open, what am I giving up? So, you know, it's all these things, the technicality parts of it, we can coach you through. That's part of the benefits of our services. But we just want to impart that, you know, have it be open, and investors will invest in you. And sometimes you'll put your business plan together, all your forecasts, and that's what it is today. Who could have predicted COVID? Who could have predicted all the supply chain challenges? What the investor wants to see from you is this the right person that's going to persevere and have the resilience that's necessary when things go awry. And inevitably they will. None of this is linear. None of it goes according to plan. But can you improvise? Can you be the right person that's going to roll up your sleeve and go, yeah, you know what? I've got a little bit of a barrier, a little bit of a hiccup, and, you know, I'm unfazed by it. I'm going to engage my investor and go, hey, I didn't foresee any of this. I want to be open and transparent. What do I do around it? So I think, you know, that's just something I'd like to impart around this whole, you know, not getting too granular about it.
Yeah, then you know, in terms of maybe you can talk sort of what an investor's expectation is in terms of interest rates, or you know, Randy's, you know, asking about would they entertain a royalty deal, percentage of net income, as you say, interest-free, convertible. There's lots of different structures, but if you were to say, to put a number on it, an interest rate would look like what?
It really, you know, I hate to say this again, it really varies. If you're saying, looking at purchasing a building, there's a bricks and mortar building. Well, that's a very different rate than if you're looking at something that you need 400,000 to put together an app, you know, so it's really different. But we've done royalty deals. I believe we have about 4 or 5, maybe a few more. You know, you manufacture a product, it may cost you $2. You sell it for $9.99. The investor will say, well, I want $1 of that until I get double my money. We have deals where the investor will say, yes, you need a building, and yes, it needs to be retrofitted. I have a building, I will retrofit it. I will give you rent free for a year, but for that, I want 5% of your business. So it varies. I can't give a hard, fast rule. I would say it's somewhere like when I think about Community Futures, I mean, they're also providing higher risk loans. And so they're a percent or two higher, so are we. But it depends on what it is. When the mortgages were 4.5%, 5%, our average mortgage on a building was running at around 6%. So it depends.
So a lot of this negotiation is really based around what the risk profile looks like for a potential business, but also the appetite for risk from the investor side.
Yeah.
I would agree, but also very much agree with Ian. It's who the founder is, who the company founder is. If you're enthusiastic, and I believe that you can roll with the punches, get up and pivot and do something to make sure that it's working, and you're willing to work 12, 16, 18 hours a day to do it, I'm far more apt to invest in you than I would in somebody who said, no, I only work 9 to 5 and I need 2 months holidays.
And will you see some of these, smaller nuances actually put into some of the deals, like, sort of just trying to protect the money, but provide also guidance to the founder, through things like, okay, you can't exceed a car allowance of $500 a month, right? So like, you're not taking my $100,000 and buying a Ferrari, right? There's do you have to put restrictions around some of the, the source and uses of the cash from the investor?
Well, the only reason why I'm chuckling is because there was one he put down, I think, a salary of about $150,000 for themselves, and the investor said, "I'm not paying your salary for the next 4 years." You put together cash flow projections, and yes, the investor doesn't monitor, but meets with you and makes sure that you're on target, so you're not doing things. I've had investors that, and it's not often, but that have said any expense that is not on this agreed upon cash flow statement, and it's more than $500, I wanted 2 signatures. One of them has to be mine. It depends, because you're building a trusting relationship. Most of the time, you don't even know who the investor is until I introduce, or Ian introduces, or Randy introduces them. We keep our investors confidential, and the investors require that. We keep the company information confidential, and we're known and recognized for, unless you want it differently, we keep what you tell us, the information, very confidential, and we're very serious about that. So when I introduce you to an investor, the investor may, for the first time, that may have been the first time they've met with you, and I want a commitment fairly quick. So are you going to go in or what? And so they have some terms, and the terms usually last, what you were talking about, maybe for about 6 months, and then they start to have a better feel. The investor wants to make sure you're successful, but needs to believe in their heart of hearts that you also will do everything to be successful. And buying a Ferrari with your investment is not what is conducive to being successful. Well, at least not in business.
Yeah, for sure. So
Yeah.
Ian, what
Rory,
yeah.
Sorry, can I add a little bit to what Mary had shared as well too? So I think it's an important distinction. I should have mentioned this in the opening. So we're a non-for-profit corporation. Our investors, we don't charge them a fee to be a part of our network, and we don't take commissions on the deals that we present in front of our investors or entrepreneurs. So we do a lot of that matchmaking. We facilitate those connections, and when we put a deal in front of an investor, they have a high degree of confidence just because of the model that we have in us. But they should do their due diligence as well, and the terms and the term sheet that they arrive at with whatever particular business is executed between the investor and the company. We report out on it. We collect that data afterwards because we have metrics and accountability to our funding agencies, FedNor and NOHFC, and that's part of the whole process that we do in the onboarding of investors and entrepreneurs. But we're not involved with any of the deal stuff. Mary has amazing relationships with the investors. They can say, hey, like, what would this structure look like to you in a perfect world? Yeah, I would think like this. You know, I obviously being really, really vague, but we're pretty careful about stepping away at that point. You know, we've done a lot of the due diligence. We've paired them with who we think are the best investors, and we've got a good track record around that. But it's not always the case, and we might misread what the investor wants. But they have a whole intake process around what kind of deals they want to do, what threshold, how many deals they do, the involvement of the company that they would invest in. So we can triage or kind of curate as best as possible. But again, I just want to stress that we're not involved in the back end part of the deal making. We do capture it from a metric point, but it is the investor and the entrepreneur that sign off.
And yeah, maybe you can expand a little bit. I mean, when we talk about businesses approaching the investor, and maybe you can describe what that process looks like and talk about what does a business need to do to have in place to even just start the process?
Yeah. So typically, a business that we would put in front of, or an entrepreneur that we would put to an investor, has a product. They have some data around that product to show evidence that maybe they have revenues. They're really going to be a disruptive technology, whatever it is. So if you go on our website, northernontarioangels.ca, you can actually see the process that we have mapped out. So there's an early intake form that the entrepreneur would come, and then it would come to me. I would do a little bit of an overview. And this is something else I want to share with everyone on the phone right now. You might not be angel investor ready today, but there's other partners in the ecosystem, like go see Brent, go see Jessica, Patty in North Bay. We'll do that referral. We want to be good corporate citizens and lift all boats in our region. And so if you come through us and you may not be ready today, we want to make sure that you can access the services that will help you move along the continuum. And then, maybe in 6 months or a year time, you have that evidence, that product, that tangible thing that we can touch, then put in front of an investor. But if I go back, there's that intake form, we do a little bit of due diligence. If there's an appetite, we think this is really going to land with our investors, I'll then match you to the consultant who is in the home community or the host community that the application comes through. So we're obviously talking in the Sault today. I'd pair you with Randy, and Randy can then do a little bit of due diligence. Thanks, Rory. That's it right there. And then we test. We push the entrepreneur, push the business a little bit, try and extract more information, and then we can facilitate, like Mary said, in an introduction at a coffee shop. It can be that casual sometimes. It can be a forum, like a private pitch that our great colleague Kim would facilitate. Or it could be at one of our events that we host across the region, where we've got 4 or 5 different companies pitching at one time. And then, like I said, once that's moved along, the entrepreneur and the investor, or the business and the investor then, or investors, sometimes there's a group of investors, we'll sit down and hash out the deal, and hopefully we close the deal. You're on mute, right?
You'd think after all that time I'd have this sorted out. So how long does a process like that usually take on average?
Yeah, no, it's not a one size fits all. Again, Mary, go ahead. I think I just beat you to it.
It has been from 5 minutes to months. It depends.
Yeah.
Sometimes I need additional information and it may take time. But to what Ian was saying, it depends if you're investor ready. You have one opportunity to make a first impression with an investor. So we want to make sure you're ready. So for some, it takes longer. It depends on the deal. Like some of the deal comes with many moving parts. So it depends. Due diligence, probably the best way to describe is NOHFC once told me, because everybody asks, how long does it take? And NOHFC once said to me, it depends on the client. I ask for information. Some of it gets back to me in that day, and some take 6 months. So if I ask you for information and I don't get it for months, it'll take months. So, but it's generally, if all the pieces are there The investor generally makes up their mind fairly quickly and will start with negotiations, start working. We highly recommend, actually, we're just short of demanding that each one of you get your own lawyer so that way you're protected. Because all we do is we just match. Think of it like a dating game. We just match, and then the rest of the work is up to you.
There you go. Now let's just talk about the, a scenario, and especially if you're in the tech side of things, you can run into a situation where there's a lot of cash burn, right? You're just going through cash. It's not sustainable, but it's also unsuspected, and that could be a positive thing because of growth, right? And as you start to scale up, you can run into these challenges. Are your angel investors prepared to do second tranches? Can you deal with that up front, or can you deal with that just sort of as your business evolves, as long as you have open communication? What's your sense in the flavor within the investment community about those type of challenges?
Well, I've found in some cases, it's the investor that says to the company founder, "Oh, you budgeted 400,000 for that. In my experience, you're going to need about 1.5 million. So we're going to start you with this," and then they work along the way. And sometimes the investor, as Ian said earlier, will bring on another investor. They will work together, but you have timelines, and as long as you fulfill those timelines, do what you're saying you're going to do, it makes it much easier. And for the most part, once an investor's in with the dime, he's there with the rest. Like they're typically really pretty good. There are some things that, if I can say, that you would never do, and that is never lie to an investor. Never lie to an investor. COVID taught us that, people would panic. I mean, their businesses completely died off overnight. And they said to me, "What should we do? I don't know. I can't meet my obligations." I said, "Pick up the phone, call the investor. The investor knows what's going on. The same effects that COVID's having with you, everybody's being affected by it. So call them." And I cannot tell you how many times the investor said, and came back to me and said, "I really appreciate that they did this. They tell me when the times are good and when they're not so good." And they come to me, ask me, because you can be really good at some things, but not at everything. And sometimes having an investor, another opinion, another strong voice helping you is very beneficial. And that has worked to its advantage to the companies. So always be open and honest. And sometimes the investor may point out that the costs are going to be a little higher than you thought.
So
yeah. So there's a theme here, Rory. I gotta always end the book into what Mary said.
Yeah,
I can't help myself.
That's why you got both here.
Exactly. I think it's a great question around, what our investors would do, multiple tranches. And Mary nailed it. Like you're building a relationship with somebody that has a lot of experience and expertise in the area that you're starting out in, and that you have expertise as well too. That's not to diminish what you're doing, but I think the success of our network is, one, the massive amount of investors that we have. Mary alluded to it earlier. There's about 450 in our network. Very sophisticated people. That understand the nuances of how to start a business, how to grow it, how to penetrate new markets. So you mentioned some technology deals, and I can think of medtech, right? Like you're coming out with a device, and you've got to get FDA, Health Canada approval, and go through a really, really long pathway to commercialization. Could be 10 years. None of that stuff goes smoothly. I think when we match a company like that's incredibly high growth potential paired with a very risky investment, we're putting it in front of the investors that have that risk tolerance. And I'm sure that they would say, "Yeah, I believe this is really, really good. We've done our due diligence. We'll be in for 1, 2, 3 tranches." But to Mary's point, you got to meet these milestones, because this first 2 years is going to be, it's make or break it. definitely in the technology realm. It can be, like I said, it's a long route forward. So again, that's incumbent on us as the organization to really pair the companies with the right investors. And fortunately, due to Randy and Mary's tremendous efforts and everyone else's in our network, we have an impressive pool to draw from. And again, it differentiates us from other angel networks.
Well, that's awesome. And maybe, we all like to think that every relationship's made up of sunshine and rainbows. But what happens when it goes south? What happens when you see the founder, the entrepreneur, and the investor really start to travel down two different paths? How do you bring resolution to that? Does the NOA even get involved in that process?
We're not really in the operational type of things. We're obviously we're made aware because it is relationships, and we've brokered that relationship. But I think we've actually got a really good track record of successes with the pairings that we've done. But you're right, stuff happens. It's not rainbows and unicorns. I think we've seen examples where an investor who might have been hands off, and all investors are different. Some of them want to have their names in neon lights. Some of them don't want any publicity at all. They just want to be clandestine and behind the scenes. And but we've seen a case where a company's gone awry. The entrepreneur might not have been forthright, and the investors just walked in. They've used their security, which is part of the agreement that they've signed, and said, we're resuscitating this business and you're going to get less of what we agreed upon because you're in breach of X, Y, and Z. But we're going to run this and we're going to get it back on track. And so your desire to do it alone, might be compromised at that time because the investors got a lot of stake in this, and they've got that experience. So they might come in and course correct.
And sometimes that one case that I can recall, the entrepreneur truly could not stomach being an entrepreneur and wasn't good at it. And the investor recognized it. And the investor said, look, I'll buy you out. And the investor found somebody else to take over and eventually get more and more ownership of it. It happens.
Yep. Interesting. And we're a small group. So I have a question here, and I think maybe actually it's probably best for, is it Rohit Ubal? If you want to unmute and put your camera on, why don't you go right ahead and ask your question of Ian and Mary?
Yeah, hi everyone. Hi Mary and hi Ian. I wanted to understand, I posted those two questions also in the chat. So one of the question is, are your group of investors interested in ad tech domain?
Maybe you can explain what that is.
Yeah, easy answer is yes.
Okay.
What is that, Rohit?
So we are working on a platform which connects high school institutions based in South Asia and Middle East with the institutions based in North America.
Interesting. And you have your second question as well.
Yeah, so we are not, as of now, we are not investor ready because we are bootstrapping it. We are two co-founders, so we are managing it for ourselves, and we believe, for the next 6 to 12 months, we would bootstrap it ourselves. So, but we want to know the, or you could connect us with someone else, the requirements that we need to meet so that we are investor ready in the coming months.
And
I don't want to be in a, I don't want to be in a situation, after 12 months, I came down to Mary and she gave me a list of documents, and then I come back again for another 6 months.
Now, whereabouts are you located, Rohit?
For now, I'm located in Toronto, but I'm, I'm planning to move down to Sudbury.
Move up.
Yeah.
Trust me, it's up. Trust me.
I have been to Sudbury 6-7 times, so I found it, interesting place, so interesting people.
Yeah, Sudbury's all right. Sault Ste. Marie's way better.
Fair. Touche, Rory. Yeah, Rohit, so I just put my contact information in the chat. Feel free to reach out. Our services are available to those that are based in Northern Ontario. So you would have to have a tangible presence in Sudbury or the Sioux or North Bay to be able to access our services. But I'm happy to have a notional conversation. I hope this session has been helpful around some of the general principles around or best practices of becoming investor ready. And like, thank you, Rory, again for sharing your screen and mapping out the process. That's on our website. Maybe I'll put that in the chat as well too. So, but again, the thing that we have to stress is that companies need to be based in Northern Ontario. We do have examples where some companies have a strong presence in the north, but they have other offices. I mean, that's just that's growth, that's expansion. But you'll need to be in the north to move this along.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And then maybe, just as we start to move into the final parts here is, Ian, how long can a business expect an angel investor to be involved in their business? Is there a time frame? Is there an expectation?
Oh, Rory, I don't have that canned answer for you. That's another theme emerging today where it's case by case. We actually we had an event here in Sudbury called Venture North at the end of September, where there was a track for entrepreneurs, there was a track for investors. There was a little bit of professional development for folks, and one of the mentors, investors, was asked that very question. And I think it's, not to sound hokey, but it's a feeling out process, right? So obviously there's conditions. You'd sign a term sheet, you're going to have your investment over a 4-year period with the rate of return that you have. If all goes well, if it's convertible debt, it's going to be converted into preferred shares. So that's one instrument. But again, it depends on the company, depends on the sector, where, if you've developed that great relationship with the investor, maybe they're with you for a really, really long time. They're part of your advisory team, right? You'll see a lot of different pitch decks where you've got your core operational team, then you've got a board of directors potentially, maybe they're on your board of directors, or then you have an advisory team, and so maybe they're not involved as an angel anymore. You've grown to the point where you don't need that investment, but you've benefited so much from the relationship. They're part of your family. You want to keep them involved. So. Again, I'm sorry, I don't. It is case by case.
I mean, I think that's a great point to make, though, and how it is becoming quite a customizable type of relationship, and how would you see that differing then from what people might see as a traditional venture capitalist, which is a very kind of different approach to funding, but it also has really built in it exit strategies almost right up front. Like they expect, to get out of this deal at a certain point in time by flexing certain triggers, right?
Yeah. So I mentioned we're part of an ecosystem. So angel investing is an earlier precursor to venture capitalism. Without a strong angel network, VCs don't have that great pipeline of quality deals. And so we pass the baton onto venture capitalism way. But I'd say, and this isn't a criticism, but based on my limited knowledge, venture capitalism, they have a thesis: we're only going to do this, and it has to meet these conditions. Northern Ontario Angels, I'd hope that we've impressed this upon everyone today. We'll look at a lot of different deals. It's part of the beauty of our region. Kenora has different assets than North Bay. So the deals are going to look different. We have to be pliable. We have to look at things from a different lens. And so, hopefully not all of our deals are going to go to venture capitalists. But those that do, and we're really proud of the ones that have, we've built quality deal flow for them, and that align with their thesis. So I hope that answers your question, Mary. Maybe you can help me out.
The only other thing that I would say is angel investment is far more patient capital than, say, venture. But when you're ready to go to a venture capital, you're in a different position. You're not looking as much for the support and the patience. And if you still need it, then maybe the venture capital might not be for you, because it's a little bit more focused, stronger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they can tend to have certain sectors that they will look at, sectors that they won't look at. business size
Yeah.
and you know, lines of revenue, right? So there's some other
That's right.
restrictions, but
And
no,
you
that's
have to
excellent.
meet-
Great.
Yeah.
Now we're closing into the top of the hour. So any words of wisdom to wrap up for our audience?
The
With
only
1
thing I
minute.
can say and can't stress enough is be patient and be honest and be passionate. Be, as Ian said, a little bit versatile, be open to suggestions, open to working. But the most important is to be honest.
Awesome. Ian?
Yeah, thanks, Mary. I would agree. And I just want to really thank you again, Rory, for inviting us, putting us together, facilitating this exposure. I think, again, Northern Ontario should be really proud of the ecosystem that we have through partnerships with the Chamber of Commerce, Millworks, Community Futures, et cetera, et cetera. So thank you for giving us this platform to share our services.
That's excellent. I really appreciate it. And we appreciate the relationship that we have with Randy, who's is the consultant looking after our area. And if there's anybody who needs to reach out to Randy, feel free to reach out to myself and we can connect you as well. Or as you say, you can go to the Northern Ontario Angels website. And it's a great site full of great useful information. And that's a great place to start as well. So thank you very much, everybody. Very much appreciated. Ian, Mary, great to see you. And all the best to you over the holiday seasons. Can't believe it's only a month away or less. And we'll look forward to seeing you in 2023. Thanks very much, everybody, for joining us. Greatly appreciate it.
Thanks,
Enjoy the rest of the
everyone.
day.
Thanks,
Happy
Rory.
holidays.
Thanks, guys.